Question which correspond to the stresses that many feel in the legs. The perception that some of you feel the bottom of the lower body is linked to changes in magnetic realignments underway on the whole planet. This is directly linked to the opening of the chakras would call the new earth, for the new dimension of intraterrestrial's roots, whereas number of memories that should evacuate. Question. And for those who do not feel anything at the level of the legs, it may not be the time, or you are not related to this process of readjustment. Question. Vibrational changes on the planet are felt by all people, even those who are not aware. Most people on this planet is a period or question, or waiting, or doubt. The important then lives, whatever the individual path, is connected to the shock notion. The shock is not meant to trigger something negative. The shock is there simply to shake the certainties of consciousness focused on a limited reality. Whatever the choices, of course, for every human being. Each path is different. Some will be strengthened in their belief or their denial of the plans that we propose. Others, however, welcome with open arms this new operating mode that is currently being installed. The aim of the set of spiritual consciousness that currently work on Earth is not to impose them choices, not impose on them one way, but offer them an alternative to what you know. To be able to propose this alternative is no need to shake number of convictions, number of beliefs, a number of operating modes, a number of certainties. Each live at your way, it can be the opposite of its neighbor. There is, at this level, you would call it a paradigm shift, a change also operating mode, but the paradigm shift is the primary operating mode change. Question. How to become more fluid to access this change? Several luminous consciousness, either in my sphere of archangelic evolution, is the level of those who preceded them on the path of awakening and realization. All of them spoke of a key word. This word is called abandonment. Abandoning their beliefs, abandoning his own power, to deliver to another will that is not what you are or what you believe you are, in any case. This happens, of course, for a number of sacrifices, but you can be sure that what I call sacrifice, on their level, is absolutely not a sacrifice to my level. Call that divesting himself of his illusions. Illusion of power, illusion lead your life, illusion of driving their projects, while just them despojarum is all this to access a more harmonious operation mode, so simple, but, once again, you can only find this operating mode as consciously except to leave their operating modes that determine their lives since millennia. There is also a revolution, a shock, but one must accept to do. We cannot, whoever we are, give them access to this new reality if you do not release the old reality they built. It cannot be otherwise. You may not have access to this operating mode without dying the old operating mode. But that belongs to them. We cannot even force them, or give them a summary of what is this new reality, as you have not completely given this essential step. The shock and the shock of their society, of their world, aim to trigger this, if it should be. But you cannot access this reality without leaving the old. This is not to say die, that does not mean disappear, but, on the contrary, be reborn. Reborn to a new operating mode, reborn to a new state that I qualify, and the Archangel Michael called, unification. You will understand soon. Unification involves the communion. This communion can take place only on condition that you open up entirely. What I capture the spirit of the person that I keep the best image you can give them is someone who is used to having, like a monkey, peanuts in a closed bottle, but which he cannot take his hand. He sees, however, that there are many peanuts available, but for this he must release those who he has in his hand, closing on the bottle. While you do not loose what he has in hand, it cannot access the abundance and unlimited. You may not want to keep the limitation of what you are and access unlimited. Your ego, your personality, your beliefs, your buildings tend to make them believe that this is impossible. Obviously, this is your role, because these operating modes maintained and allowed life in the reality that you have experienced. But you cannot access this new reality without going through the sense of abandonment that is really and truly a renaissance. A renaissance for something else, and that something else will just be you possible provided that you exceed the threshold of trust and the threshold of consciousness to reach it. I could explain to them, in words, what is this new reality? I could sell them through words, through vibrations, but is nevertheless only his hand loose what she keeps inside the bottle, which is its limited life. This is, as I said, the Archangel Michael, your decision, not ours. This requires an abandonment. Abandonment requires courage, need to overcome the fears and fear. It is only at this price you can take that step. If you give this step, you will realize that it will definitely laugh at what you were. Question: the work must be done, not only a physical, but a mental plane? I speak of all reality. You are built. This refers to the construction of this body they inhabit and who build patiently in this life and in the afterlife. It also refers to its more subtle structure, concerning what you call, I believe, emotional body and mental body. You may not and cannot accept it for your mental or a decision born of an emotion, or a wish. It is in this sense that the word most used by the Archangel Michael, myself and others, the word the most accurate in their language, is the word abandonment. Abandonment is the time when all the tensions linked to the maintenance of his life, such as know, cease and disappear. Abandonment also need to surrender your own will to another will that is yourself, but on another level. But you can only make or cross this threshold accepting it. This acceptance is not, either, a mental act, nor is it an act of desire, but totally corresponds to what I have called the confidence level and awareness. This is crucial, not to understand, not to intellectualize, not to wish, but crucial to live. What is not the same thing? This abandonment, in other words, is also the time that you might call, though not exactly, the death of the ego. The ego does not want to die, just as man does not want to die, and yet he knows that he dies one day, necessarily, that one day is forgetfulness of what was. The vision that you have of yourself is limited. When you die, objective and indeed the vision of yourself is no longer fixed to the shape and constructions developed in the worlds of density on the worlds of this size. His vision becomes broader and yet you sink this plane of reality and inevitably resume the same schemes, the same functions with other habits, with other stories but, however, is always the same story. Some are deluded by the quality of their own history and allowed to hold again for this world and this particular reality that you live. The trap is connected to the attraction. As you live the attraction to your desires while living attraction to their beliefs, their assumptions, their livelihoods, their operating modes, you cannot access the unlimited and continue to keep the limitation, its own limitation. Nobody limited, but yourself. As they revealed the Archangel Michael, you are great masters of light, really, but you play the illusion games, you play to deny what you are and this game lasts for a long, long time. In the sense, there is because these privileged moments, the crowd of spiritual consciousness, multidimensional looking at them with the eyes of the heart, try to shake for a shock its limited concepts and wrong of what you believe to be. Question: they come to move these limits? Only you, any person other than you can individually move these limits. We can shake through a shock, a number, I would say, their convictions, their beliefs, their certainties, but as repeated them too many actors, We cannot take this step instead. This is part of the initial oath that you have spent for yourself, but also for not much like that word, but it's better than meeting spiritual bodies that generated this experience, which you took so much taste, they did not view the drop bottle of hand. Question: this is specific to this dimension? There, as you know, this dimension may be cut or separated from, or unified, which is not specific to this dimension. This is specific to the oath that you yourself have imposed. What was to be a limited experience lasted, not to prolong the experience of limitation, but because you were persuaded, individual and collective basis, to continuing the experience you would further grow the light and masters were. This can be real, this can be a real justification, but it was not absolutely necessary. However, respecting his oath, his logic, we hope patiently for the cycle, the rounds of galaxies, find a stronger opportunity to let them see the suggestion and not a real view what is the unlimited side. But we commit all, long ago, never to interfere with what you named freedom, free will, etc. experience. However, all the bad things, so even one day come to an end. Employment deliberately the word bad things because the experience is never bad, even if the chocolate is not bad, but then to eat 10 kilograms, every one of his days, do not think the experience can be enjoyable. It is a matter of dosage, and most of you have perhaps in his joy and his oath, exaggerated a little doses, I would say. However, we are faithful to what we decided. Question: this experience of third dimension disassociated serve others? So, I am not responsible for this decision gender. It will not fit me ever and cannot go through what you call the incarnation, disassociated or unified. By the way, it belongs to those who, one day, long ago, in linear time, have lived this kind of experience. We cannot, we archangels, intends, as those who will suggest them, or propose or impose whatever regarding your way. Do not forget that the experience of this world is unique. This is not to say that the worlds of disassociated incarnation does not exist elsewhere. But I can assure you that the experience you have lived is, on many levels, unique. From our point of view, our dimension, and to employ one of the expressions, whatever the side, I guarantee he's bright, essential in its history. The expression that comes to me is that this is a ridiculous for too much laughter. If I took the example of the monkey, it is exactly what resembles them. What is to give much laughter, when we see, what you really are? Power would also take the example of someone who was beating like crazy in a closed door while behind him, turning, he would notice an open door, which would lead to exactly the same place. In this sense it is effectively at the same time great but effectively, as they say, to give much laughter. But true and really. Question: I found it difficult to conceive that said luminous beings as we suppose to be, do not have this insight? You cannot have it until you have crossed that threshold. You cannot claim or wish also a discernment, while a world without any discrimination. There is a paradox and the paradoxical effect of his own conduct. You were involved and invested so much in this reality that even lost sight of the very meaning of life, and you are meant to be alive. In the sense, it is also in their language, too much laughter, if an archangel can laugh. Question: the real monkey is not one that is stuck in the cage, but one that looks at the monkey. We look for promise, though, remain at his side. When I tell our side is before above you, because obviously you were so taken in their creations and your illusions that if we were not involved, not on their freedom, but on the very structure of this world, there are very long time this world would have disappeared, which is not the goal, I confess, to the beings who came to work and turn this matter. I remember those we archangels and other spiritual consciousness that were never incarnated in order to understand it. We cannot in any way participate in their games. We just can effectively look at them. Question: you accompany us, but you yourself are followed? Certainly. We are accompanied by the light. It is the only accompaniment to our eyes, to our conscience before possible, desirable and accomplished. When some of his traveling companions in this humanity they said the light was omniscient, that the light was all it was not a vision of the spirit. This was not something either false. It was the strict truth. Light, I look for the word, is, power would say, self-smart in the sense that it is sufficient in itself. Light never questions the road that it will take. Light is therefore evidence, contrary to the illusion in which you evolve. Question: it says that without his intervention the earth would have been destroyed. It means that the experience aground? If they had arrived at this end, in spite of our presence, the experience would have stranded. But the experience remains the experience. It is not the truth, whatever the grandeur and beauty of your experience. I say that if it were possible, smiling. To paraphrase a line from another archangel, not I will quote the source, you have placed a weight process. You mistook the weight the way. Question: are the fears that have caused all this destruction? The image I can give is that until a very recent past, you wove more veil of their own ignorance, by his oath at the level of the earth, by fear, a closing veil. This veil, thanks to light, thanks to God and thanks to love, was dissolved. And today, what happens? Many of you feel the imminence of a shock that I would not describe. And yet, what do? This shock is a shock of light. Here we literally dissolve the thousands of egregores fears that you have built around you. However, today, what happens? Humans still have more fear than before, because you are no longer protected by their breastplates fears to the world level. Paradoxically, there is also globally, more fear. Are you afraid of not being protected in their experience of duality? This is also a paradox of having removed his clothes and his fear of coats that covered the whole of this planet and realized that, after all, the human being, in general, continues to create fear. Fear is a resistance. Resistance is the opposite of abandonment. You cannot overcome fear by fear, escape. You can overcome fear only the abandonment, and only for him. Question: clean energy centers just to climb in vibration? The fact: clear the set of your lamps, your energy centers does not in itself indicate what you are, but it would be very simple. This question illustrates the fear that lives, because you say they are, quite logically, by the way, in their mode of operation, you will cleanse, purify, transcend your chakras. This prevents them look fear. However, fear persists in one way or another. The only way is to cross the threshold of trust and the threshold of consciousness. There is no other alternative. In other words, you will rise and rise and rise even in the vibration. You may spark new spiritual functions, but, as they have not abandoned, will not cross the door. I told them that you need to drop the hand that has the peanuts into the bottle. There is nothing else to do. The vibration will follow. The awakening of your consciousness follow, I would say, almost instantly. But then you cannot escape it. This has nothing to do with the chakras. The activation of your chakras allows them to approach a state of neglect. But leaving is a non-vibratory act. It is an act of trust and awareness. I do not say the level of consciousness, but the integration of consciousness, which is not the same thing. You can access essential knowledge. You can access the mysteries of the universe. You can talk with a spiritual entity, whatever its source, its origin and its level. However, it is not so that you will open your hand into the jar. The work that is currently carried out in the whole of this galaxy, in privileged moments, the Archangel Michael, aims to bring them the best and the closest to this state of neglect, the expansion of your consciousness, the opening for reconnection. But in the meantime, are you commanding your hand, not us? Question: what is understood when Jesus said you must leave father and mother? Certainly, you should all leave and above all let themselves be yourself. You cannot adhere to what you are and want to be in the abandonment. You cannot simultaneously be reunited and the masters of light that you are and remain in this ridiculous condition. I am not advocating it, obviously abandoning this reality, since you came especially to transform this reality. So, what you call suicide or death would be a mistake. It's up to them well before, not die for this plan, but your illusions. You cannot be both the master of light and the small body in which they are. Abandonment of which I speak is not even leave your life, or some operating modes, but really abandon yourself. This is understanding. Abandon yourself. Yourself is not to abandon the external conditions, but leave a number of indoor circumstances that cause you to be, for the moment, limited, both in terms of their perceptions as to the level of their lives, as the level of your thoughts is at all levels. You are unlimited living beings, limitation, and that, moreover, limited. You have to leave it. You may leave their profession, social life, and take in the valley of a mountain without much to be abandoned. There also create an illusion more. Understand well that using the language that echoes your mental tool, their desires, their intellects, I try, however, through the vibration of these words, make them closer to something that is far beyond words. Obviously, the abandonment is an inner abandonment. You well understood. This corresponds to 2 steps, that is not to kill the little self or kill the personality, but perform within this same illusion, which the Archangel Michael called, I believe, the C unit. This is the first step. But the abandonment occurs in the previous step, where all personal will is annihilated, the will of the light. A number of assumptions and signs are related to the opening of the road to surrender to the light, or, if they prefer, to approach the threshold of trust and awareness. These signals are different according to humans. If you have built during their lives specific strategies guided by fear when approaching this threshold, of course, you still have more fear. If you have built sadness strategies, you are, approaching the threshold, more and more sad. I believe this was expressed very appropriately by an entity that I keep who did call Ram, which told them of a very particular concept that is not required to have lived, as did certain mystics of past times, for tens years, which they called the dark night of the soul. This may be living in a linear time of it's extremely short. But whenever we approach this fateful word is the word abandonment. It would be interesting, by the way, considering the pronunciation of the word, find the etymology need to undo the mental constructions coming of the word abandonment. Question: this could be a way of giving of oneself to what is called the light or the Father? You really have to find the original sense of the word abandonment. In fact, the abandonment of abundance and giving. This is a first step, but not the only one. I invite you then to find the original sense of that word. We thank you for being so patient.